In the tumultuous world of international trade, former U.S. President Donald Trump made a move that sent shockwaves across the globe. In 2025, he imposed hefty tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. These tariffs, 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum, targeted key allies like Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. Trump justified this protectionist measure as a way to safeguard American jobs and industries from what he deemed unfair competition. However, this decision ignited a firestorm of controversy and retaliation, marking the beginning of a tense trade standoff. Trump's tariffs were met with immediate condemnation from the affected nations. They argued that these tariffs violated international trade agreements and would harm their own economies. The move was seen as a betrayal by countries that had long been U.S. allies, souring diplomatic relations and casting a long shadow over the global trade landscape. This was not the first time Trump had employed tariffs as a tool in his America First agenda. Throughout his presidency, he had imposed tariffs on various goods from China and other countries, sparking trade disputes and creating uncertainty in the global market. However, the 2025 tariffs on steel and aluminum, targeting long-standing allies, marked a significant escalation in his protectionist policies. The impact of these tariffs was felt far and wide, reverberating through global supply chains and sending ripples of uncertainty throughout the global economy. As the world watched, a trade war of unpredictable proportions loomed on the horizon. Canada and Germany, two of the nations directly targeted by Trump's tariffs, did not take the measures lying down. They responded with swift and decisive action, announcing retaliatory tariffs on a range of American goods. Canada, a staunch U.S. ally and its largest trading partner, retaliated with tariffs on $30 billion worth of U.S. imports. Germany, a leading economic powerhouse in Europe, joined the chorus of criticism against Trump's tariffs. The German government, viewing the tariffs as a direct attack on their economy, prepared to defend their industries and vowed to protect their interests. They also began to diversify their trade partnerships, seeking to reduce their reliance on the U.S. market. These retaliatory measures were not merely symbolic gestures of displeasure, they were carefully calibrated to inflict economic pain on specific sectors and political constituencies in the United States, aiming to pressure the Trump administration to reconsider its protectionist policies. The leaders of Canada and Germany emerged as vocal critics of Trump's trade policies. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, known for his measured diplomacy, did not mince words in expressing his disapproval. He called the tariffs insulting and unacceptable, emphasizing the strong economic ties and historical friendship between the two countries. Meanwhile, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock, a rising star in European politics, denounced Trump's tariffs as a wrecking ball to the global trading system. She argued that the tariffs would not only harm the economies of the targeted nations, but also ultimately hurt American businesses and consumers. Baerbock's strong stance against Trump's protectionism resonated with many European leaders who shared her concerns about the future of global trade. Trudeau and Baerbock's vocal opposition to Trump's tariffs galvanized international opposition to his trade policies. They framed the issue not just as a trade dispute, but as an attack on the rules-based international order that had underpinned global prosperity for decades. The financial markets, known for their sensitivity to geopolitical events, reacted swiftly to the escalating trade tensions. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, a key indicator of U.S. stock market performance, plummeted by over 600 points when the tariffs were first announced. Investors, fearing a full-blown trade war, pulled back from the markets, sending shockwaves through Wall Street and beyond. However, the markets regained some ground after Trump announced a temporary exemption for Canada and Mexico from the tariffs, pending the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement. This temporary reprieve calmed investors' nerves somewhat, but uncertainty continued to linger in the air. The markets remained volatile, reflecting the fragile state of global trade relations and the unpredictable nature of Trump's trade policies. The temporary respite proved to be short-lived. As negotiations with Canada and Mexico faltered, Trump reinstated the tariffs, once again sending shockwaves through the markets. The back-and-forth nature of Trump's tariff policies kept investors on edge, further fueling market volatility. Section 5. Economic Tremors. Beyond the stock market. The impact of Trump's trade policies extended far beyond the stock market. Key economic indicators in the United States and abroad began to flash warning signs. U.S. private payrolls, a measure of job growth in the private sector, grew at a slower pace than expected, suggesting that businesses were becoming more cautious about hiring amid trade uncertainty. Oil prices, a barometer of global economic health, also dipped as traders worried that a trade war could dampen global economic growth and reduce demand for oil. The energy sector, a major driver of the U.S. economy, felt the chill of the trade dispute as oil and gas companies saw their stock prices fluctuate in response to the escalating tensions. The trade war also had ripple effects on other economies around the world. China, the European Union, and other major trading partners experienced slowdowns in export growth as the trade dispute disrupted global supply chains and reduced demand for goods and services. Section 6. Trump's response: unwavering protectionism. Despite the global backlash and signs of economic strain, Trump remained steadfast in his America First approach to trade. He argued that the tariffs were necessary to protect jobs and industries from unfair competition. Trump viewed the trade deficit as a sign of economic weakness and believed that imposing tariffs would force other countries to make concessions and agree to more favorable trade deals with the United States. Trump dismissed concerns about a trade war, arguing that the United States was in a strong position to win any trade dispute. He believed that his aggressive stance on trade would ultimately benefit the American economy by bringing back manufacturing jobs and reducing the trade deficit. Despite criticism from economists and business leaders about the potential negative consequences of his trade policies, he remained committed to his protectionist agenda. Trump's uncompromising stance on trade contributed to a climate of uncertainty and unpredictability in the global economy. Businesses and investors were left to navigate an ever-changing landscape of tariffs, trade barriers, and shifting geopolitical alliances. Section 7. The specter of a trade war. As the trade dispute between the United States and its allies escalated, the specter of a full-blown trade war loomed large. Economists warned of the dire consequences of a trade war, predicting job losses, higher prices for consumers, and slower economic growth. They argued that tariffs would disrupt global supply chains, raise costs for businesses, and ultimately harm the global economy. The trade war also threatened to unravel decades of progress towards global free trade. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, or GATT, and the World Trade Organization, WTO, institutions established after World War II to promote free trade and prevent protectionism, were put under immense strain as the rules-based trading system faced its biggest challenge in decades. The uncertainty surrounding the trade war had a chilling effect on business investment and consumer confidence. Businesses delayed investments, fearing that the tariffs would make their products more expensive and less competitive in the global market. Consumers, worried about the rising cost of goods and services, cut back on spending, further dampening economic growth. Section 8. The global economy, bracing for impact. The escalating trade tensions sent shockwaves through the global economy, raising concerns about a slowdown in global growth. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, warned that a full-blown trade war could shave off a significant percentage from global GDP growth, pushing the world economy closer to recession. The trade war also exacerbated existing geopolitical tensions. The European Union, already grappling with Brexit and internal divisions, found itself caught in the crossfire between the United States and China. The trade dispute strained transatlantic relations, weakening the Western alliance at a time of heightened global uncertainty. Developing countries, many of which rely heavily on exports to the United States and other developed economies, faced collateral damage from the trade war. The slowdown in global trade reduced demand for their exports, hurting their economies and potentially undermining efforts to reduce poverty and improve living standards. Section 9. The legacy of Trump's trade tumult. Trump's trade policies left a lasting impact on the global trading system and the U.S. economy. While his supporters argued that his tough stance on trade was necessary to protect American jobs and interests, his critics contended that his protectionist policies ultimately harmed the U.S. economy and its standing in the world. The trade war disrupted global supply chains, raised costs for businesses and consumers, and slowed economic growth. It also strained relationships with key U.S. allies, undermining global cooperation on trade and other issues. The Biden administration, which took office in 2021, faced the daunting task of repairing the damage caused by Trump's trade policies and restoring trust with U.S. allies. The legacy of Trump's trade tumult serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of protectionism and the importance of a rules-based international trading system. As the world grapples with the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic and other challenges, cooperation and open markets are more important than ever to ensure a sustainable and inclusive global recovery.